Hey y'all, welcome to Wisteria Witches. It's GypsyChique. I'm gonna do a video that I promised you guys in my intro, which was to talk about Marie LaVeau. Now, first of all, I want to make sure that I say out loud, oh, glad I checked, I am burning some rose incense, which to me is very feminine and, soothing. And so I'm burning this, I guess for Marie's energy, for the presence of Marie LaVeau, just in case she hears me being goofy and maybe disrespectful. I'm really going to try not to be, but it's hard to call what I'm going to say. So I just want to light this ahead of time to let her know we cool. I'm not trying to disrespect you or cause you to feel like you need to come and tell me anything or correct me or feel negatively towards me in any way. I've got this lit because I know I would appreciate the thought. Spiced apple toddy candle. What southern woman doesn't like a good apple spiced toddy? Come on. Okay, so I have my rose, and I have my spiced toddy, and it smells like a real southern woman in here. On to Marie LaVeau. I honestly do not have a book on Marie LaVeau. However, after doing just a little snippet that I've done to kind of look into stuff for this video, I've realized that I actually do want a book, and I want some sources. I want some sources for information because just to start, before I even go into the whole story of Marie LaVeau, let me just point out that according to the Voodoo Museum in New Orleans, their website, and I'm going to put links to everything I say in the little box below, so don't stress. This one has her being born on September 10th, 1801 in New Orleans. This one, right here, from Dr. Romeo Vitelli, who apparently did a evening tour with a guide named Kalila, who was apparently a practicing Wiccan, according to this, gave a tour of the local highlights. And so this is him talking about it. So I'm going to say, I guess the source was this tour guide, or, I don't know if he doesn't say where he got his info. But his says born in 1783. 1783, 1801. That's a bit of a spread. I don't know when she was born. Next. Her parents. Okay. Yeah, there was no consistency there either. And I already knew this, she was a free person of color at the time, and she was actually, well, okay, let me go back. This one says that she was born to two free persons of color as a result of a plissage, which was kind of like, I guess it would be like, oh, because like gay marriage still isn't legal everywhere, so they have their own agreements, domestic partnership or whatever. Okay, this is kind of what that was. They didn't allow interracial marriages at the time, and so they would allow these plissages because that was okay, because that was different. So she apparently was the daughter of a free woman and a free man that were both mulattoes. According to Dr. Vitelli, she was actually born to a Haitian slave and a rich plantation owner. Okay, so on one hand, you have the common story of the time, because this happened a lot. It was very commonplace that these plissage arrangements would happen and children would be born of them. And many times the females ended up raising the children with their mother. It was a big family living in the house, and the men weren't always part of the long-term process, I suppose you could say. And so that was one thing, and that's a pretty common kind of how a lot of people lived and were raised and, did things at that point, in that time, in that place. But then you have the sensational, beautiful mulatto woman born to a wealthy landowner and a Haitian slave. Which, again, could be totally possible because that did happen. But it's like, okay, one of y'all's lying. Because both those stories can't really touch each other. Let's talk about her first marriage. That was consistent. That must be on a record written down in pen and ink somewhere. I guess pen and ink is the same thing, isn't it? You know what I mean. Here it says that she married Jacques Paris in 1819. This one also has her as being a devout Catholic. She was a devout Catholic. She went to Mass every day of her life. She married She married Jacques Paris in 1819. Okay, same here. We have here that she was married to Jacques Paris in 1819 at the St. Louis Cathedral. All right, so that's consistent. 1819, she married a guy named Jack. She married Jack. Handsome Jack. Just like the song. Okay, I'm going to put a link for that too. If you've never heard the Marie LaVeau song, you talk about Handsome Jack. Jack Paris. Jack Paris. Ha! Okay. So, then we move on. Apparently, okay, there was also mixed stories here. Either he died or he up and left her. We're not sure. But after that time when he left, by the way, they had 2 children, and they both lived to maturity, evidently. And then he either died or he up and left. We're not really sure. I've got 2 pieces of paper and 2 different stories on how he stayed. The Voodoo Museum says he died. And the Marie LaVeau Phenomenon article says that either he died or he left. But either way, she started calling herself the Widow Paris. And apparently that is a name that kind of stuck with her as one of her other, names that she went by. Let's see. Then okay. Now, once she turns into a grown-up, that's where the story gets colorful, and that's where there's a lot of mixed stuff. I watched a video the other day here on YouTube, and I'll put the link to that too. I would encourage you to go watch it. It's really interesting, and they start to touch on some of it in here, but they don't really go into detail. The Voodoo Museum does talk about, which is well known, that she was very helpful in her community. She helped heal people. She took care of people. She, was a very charitable person. She got your back. But she was also, called a witch. And I guess, if somebody's gaining something, somebody else got to be losing something. So I guess those are the ones that didn't like her that much. In the video, they talk about a couple of really cool stories. So seriously, when you're done here, when I'm done talking, click on the link and go check it out, because it's actually a really informative video, and they give these 2 examples of her kind of getting involved in some kind of a situation in New Orleans. One of them had to do with, they did something very bad, and so they had been convicted of this murder, and they went to her and they asked for her help, and they ended up falling out of the ropes, and they were spared public execution and all of this. Anyway, it had to do with her, and I guess there's evidence or historical evidence that supports the fact that she was sort of a vocal person against public executions, because back then they'd still kind of hang out in the square. It was like a big event, and everybody could watch you choking to death or shaken or whatever. I can't imagine watching that. But anyway, Marie did not agree with that practice and felt like it was barbaric, which it is. So, well, I say that. I don't know what her intentions were. But she was against it. Didn't support it at all. So that was one of the legends, I guess, surrounding her, is that she got these boys, and they were hanged anyway a few days later, but it was, I don't know, go watch the video. The other one had to do with her, taking the punishment of the other person's deeds in order to get them off. The exchange was that she would get a house on St. Anne Street, which is actually the street she lived on. And I believe she died in the house on that street. I believe that's where she lived and died the rest of her days. But the story behind how she got in that house is that she got some wealthy man's son off on some crime that he had committed. And again, I'm bad with crimes. I can't remember. But he got him off, and what happened was she, I guess the thought process was that, whenever someone does something bad, they have to pay their penance for it. They have to even out the mojo. They have to, for whatever they inflicted, they have to take back in. And so she, for like a couple days or a couple weeks before the trial, she was holding these peppers in her mouth, um, and just punishing herself with these peppers. And then right before the trial, she put them under the judge's chair. And apparently the voodoo that she do got up all in the judge's senses, and he let this kid off on either a lesser charge or got him off altogether. I don't know. But again, go watch the video. But it's just, and whether or not she did, it's fascinating to me that someone, could leave such a lasting impression. And, she's like Paul Bunyan, it's like the stuff of legends. And I just think that's so, cool. One of the articles did say that she apparently, as she aged, her daughter started to take care of her, and she became kind of a, shut in. And her daughter, or apparently she became a devout Catholic from that point on. She did not perform ritual anymore. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe she just didn't openly practice anymore. It's hard to say what any of this stuff is, I mean, it's really hard to, because you have such conflicting, just these two. I mean, these were the first two that I came across, and it's like, I don't know anything about Marie LaVeau. Oh, they did have some interesting stuff in the Voodoo Museum. It said just a couple of little interesting facts. She spoke French. She never went to school, apparently. She never learned to read or write, or even write her name, evidently. Apparently she, well, like I said earlier, she was a political liberal, a humanist with a desire to heal. Apparently, the Voodoo Museum is saying that her grandfather on her father's side was white, and that he wasn't a member of the Louisiana legislature, but he had been a member, and I'm quoting it here, of the old Spanish Cabildo, and that one time was appointed acting mayor of New Orleans. So apparently her grandfather was kind of a big dude in town. Oh, one cool thing, and I can't remember if I read it in one of these articles. I think it might have been, or maybe it was the video. I think it was in the video. She actually was so good at politicking that she convinced the priest at the Catholic church where she went on Sundays. It's like they would go to church on Sundays, and then on Sunday mornings, and like on Sunday nights they had ritual, and then there was another day where they go down to this certain part of town, Congo Square, and they all do their, their worship and their ritual and whatever it is that they, they're practicing. They do it on this night all together. Anyway, she got permission from the Catholic priest to hold voodoo rituals and like services, I guess, at the altar in the church, like in the church. In the church. Voodoo in the church. That is a savvy broad right there. That's pretty awesome. I don't think there's a lot of people that get to practice voodoo in a Catholic church. Now, I know that they have, blended in that region as far as, it's like Santeria or whatever, and I get that, but still, on the Catholic altar. She was the Voodoo Queen of New Orleans. You want to know who Marie LaVeau was? In a nutshell, she was the Voodoo Queen of New Orleans. As far as I'm concerned, she still is. She's a very powerful energy, whenever I think about the essence of who she was and what's left of her, I guess, because I didn't know her, so I can't say absolutely what her essence was. But even if you shave off all of the big gigantic stories and all of the, just the fact that whatever she did, she wasn't afraid to live out loud, and I just think that's so cool. Anyway, so now I'm all fuzzy feeling about Marie LaVeau, and honestly, I haven't learned a whole lot more about her than I knew before, or that I didn't already kind of, know. I mean, I've read enough, stuff in history classes to know kind of what the culture was in that part of the United States, but and still is to some degree. But you know, the taboos back then were like taboos. Now everything's kind of like that's taboo. You know, back then it was like so. Yeah, she's awesome. All right, thank you all for joining me. I hope that these resources that I've given you will steer you in the right direction. I don't know how informative my video was, but thanks for watching the whole time. You all have a great evening, and blessed be.